A little over a year ago, Alex Pietrangelo led the St. Louis Blues to their first ever Stanley Cup. If you had told Blues fans that the following season would be Pietrangelo's last in the Blues uniform, they would have called you crazy. Unfortunately, based on reports that talks between the Blues and Pietrangelo have soured, it looks like that very well could be the case. Pietrangelo is an exceptionally talented right-handed defenseman. He has made the second All-Star team twice in his career, and while he has never won the Norris Trophy, he has been in the top 5 nominated players for the Norris 3 times, including in this past season. He's also quite consistent when it comes to putting up points, averaging 49 points for an 82-game season over the course of his career. Due to all these benefits, Pietrangelo is likely to command somewhere between $8 and $9 million per season on a longer-term deal. However, something to keep in mind is that he is currently 30 years old. This means that signing him to a big deal will, in all likelihood, result in some regression in the later years of this deal as he ages. This means there's a good chance the team signing him will want to be contending sometime in the next 1 to 5 years, while Pietrangelo is still performing at a high level. With a ton of speculation around where he could end up, I wanted to take a closer look at 5 potential landing spots for Pietrangelo. These are all teams looking to contend now or very soon in the future. All are in need of a top-pairing right-handed defenseman, and all of them could create or have the cap space to sign him to a big long-term deal. In no particular order, let's start with the Calgary Flames. With several straight seasons of disappointment behind them, the Flames are likely looking to make some big changes, and signing Pietrangelo is definitely on their radar. They also have nearly $17 million in projected cap space for the upcoming season, and outside of a starting goaltender, they don't have any major pieces that need to be signed. This means they wouldn't need to make any cap-clearing moves in order to fit Pietrangelo into their lineup. If we look at where Pietrangelo might fit into their decor, we see that he fits quite nicely in Calgary. With Brody and Hamonic both having their deals expire with the conclusion of this season, Calgary could opt to pursue Pietrangelo, who could take Brody's spot alongside captain Mark Giordano. Of course, there's always the option to separate the two veteran defensemen as well. This would, of course, require them to let either one or both of Brody and Hamonic walk in free agency. Looking down the line, the Flames don't have too many major pieces to re-sign until the 2022-23 season, when Tkachuk, Gaudreau, and Giordano all have their current deals expiring. Though at this point, Giordano would be 39, and there are rumblings that Gaudreau could be moved before the season starts, so this may be a non-issue. At the end of the day, if the Flames want to make a big splash and shake things up in their locker room, signing Pietrangelo and then focusing on adjusting their forward core is one way to do it, and they certainly have the cap space to make that happen. If we move a little north from Calgary, one of their biggest rivals could also be competing for Pietrangelo's talents. The Edmonton Oilers are in desperate need of a top-pairing D-man, and Pietrangelo is exactly that. But with only $10.5 million in projected cap space and a few RFAs to sign, they will likely need to make a move or two in order to fit Pietrangelo's contract. Luckily for the Oilers, they have 2 prime candidates in Adam Larsson and Chris Russell. Both are in the final year of their deal and have a cap hit of $4.17 million and $4.0 million respectively. Larsson is likely the easier one to move, as he is the better player of the two and doesn't have any no-trade clause attached to his contract, unlike Russell, who has a 15-team trade list. One thing in Russell's favor is the fact that his real dollar cost is much lower, with only $1.5 million in base salary this year to Larsson's $5.1 million, music to Eugene Melnick's ears. The Oilers would likely only need to move on from one of these players in order to afford Pietrangelo, and with both of their contracts expiring next season anyways, they should still have enough cap space to re-sign Nugent Hopkins and Yamamoto when combined with the other expiring contracts. This is especially true with the $2.33 million being freed up from the Pouliot and Sekera buyouts. In terms of lineup, Pietrangelo would fit right into the 1D role, likely next to either Klefbom or Nurse. With the removal of Larsson, it would be up to the promising Ethan Bear to take the slot on the second D pairing. He has shown that he is quite capable, so hopefully he is ready to do so. Overall, losing both Larsson and Russell actually wouldn't be too bad for the Oilers. Outside of Pietrangelo, the Oilers also need to sign a second goaltender to share the crease with Koskinen, which would eat into their cap space. They also need some help in the middle six, but pursuing Pietrangelo may close the door on doing so. It would be a tight squeeze for them, but adding Pietrangelo into their lineup that already has McDavid and Draisaitl would go a long way towards making them a real cup threat for the next several years. I don't think I could have made a list like this without talking about the Maple Leafs. With just over $6 million in projected cap space for the upcoming season, the Leafs would need to make several moves to fit Pietrangelo into their cap. Surprisingly, they are in a good position to do so, as they have a couple smaller, easier to move pieces compared to other teams. And no, I'm not talking about Mitch Marner or William Nylander. I'm talking about Andreas Johnsson and Alexander Kerfoot. Kerfoot and Johnsson are locked up for another 3 years each at $3.5 million and $3.4 million respectively. So moving them would clear total cap space of $6.9 million, assuming of course that the Leafs don't bring back any salary in a trade. Both players are still fairly young and have been good for about 40 points per season, so they shouldn't be too difficult to move. Getting rid of both of them would give $13 million in cap space, which would give them enough to sign Pietrangelo and still have some left for Mikheyev and some league minimum fourth liners. They can also add more to their cap space by burying or moving players like Marincin and Rosen, which could help them re-sign Dermott. They could also instead choose to send Dermott elsewhere. Engvall is another small contract they could look to get rid of, and it would clear another $1.25 million in space. Finally, they also have the option to move Anderson, replacing him with a cheaper option via trade, someone like Kemper, Korpisalo, or Jari to name a few. Like the Oilers, the Leafs lack a true number one right-handed defenseman, so Pietrangelo would slot straight into the first pairing, likely with Riley or Muzzin. All in all, the Leafs could make some smaller moves to fit Pietrangelo into their current core, but the real question is, should they? Signing a deal like this probably means Hyman is gone after this coming season, and Riley will be gone when his current deal expires in the 2022-23 season. On top of this, they would be clearing out a lot of their depth scoring to make space for Pietrangelo, making the team even more top-heavy. Are these things the Leafs are willing to sacrifice for a player of Pietrangelo's level? Moving on to our first American team, we have the Vegas Golden Knights. Of all the teams on this list, they will definitely have the hardest time creating room for Pietrangelo. They only have just under $5 million in cap space to work with, and unlike the Leafs, they will need to move a couple bigger pieces in order to make the Pietrangelo deal work. In particular, both Stastny and Fleury will need to go, depending on how the Leonard situation plays out, of course. With rumors of Leonard agreeing to a handshake deal in the $5 million range, if this is true, it could make the Vegas cap situation a little easier. In this case, they would be able to retain some salary on either Stastny or Fleury and still be able to afford Pietrangelo, which would make them much easier to move. This would give them an additional $13.5 million in space minus whatever they retain, which would be more than enough to sign Pietrangelo. Depending on how much salary they retain, they may also need to move one of McNabb or Holden. This would allow them to either add some depth pieces for the season or free up a little space for Martinez in the following season. The 2022-23 season may get rough cap-wise, depending on how Glass, Waugh, and Whitecloud perform, but that will hopefully be mitigated by a cap that is no longer flat and the contracts for Smith and Reeves ending. While Vegas does have an extremely talented D-man in Shea Theodore, he's shown the ability to play on both the left and the right side. This gives Vegas some flexibility with Pietrangelo, as they could choose to move Theodore back to the left side to pair with him, or they could separate the two and have Pietrangelo play with someone like Martinez. Either way, adding Pietrangelo would make the Vegas D-core very scary moving forward, and can be the thing that pushes them over the edge from cup contenders to cup winners. Finally, the last team on our list is the Buffalo Sabres. They have by far the most cap space of any team mentioned previously, with over $34 million in projected cap space for the upcoming season. They also have by far the most NHL players with expired contracts at 15. While a lot of this space is going to be used to re-sign some of their free agents, there is still more than enough to pick up a guy like Pietrangelo. In terms of who they want to bring back, Olofsson and Reinhart will surely be back, and guys like Dominic Cahoon, Tage Thompson, and Linus Ullmark will likely return as well. The rest of the forwards are up in the air, with potential for guys like Jimmy Vesey and Wayne Simmons to return if the deals make sense. When it comes to defense, Buffalo has their two promising prospects in Dahlin and Joker. Outside of those two, they have a bit of a jam of middling players on the right side, including Ristolainen, Miller, and Montour. To fit Pietrangelo in without pushing Joker down the depth chart too much, you would likely need to move at least two of these guys. However, which two is up in the air. Montour could be fairly easy to move as he is still a restricted free agent and is a decent depth piece for most teams. Ristolainen is the youngest and puts up the best numbers of the three, so I'm sure the Sabres could find a decent landing spot for him should they choose to move him. Miller is coming off a very bad season, but he put up a solid couple years with the Golden Knights, so someone might be willing to take a risk on him to return to form. If the price is right, of course. At the end of the day, while Buffalo has some solid talent in players like Eichel and Dahlin, they need more pieces to augment them if they want to be competitive. This could start with the addition of someone like Pietrangelo, but they will still need some help in the forward department, whether that be from trades or other free agent signings. I do have a couple honorable mentions. While these next two teams have been talked about in the media, I don't think they're going to be candidates when it comes to Pietrangelo, but they are in a position to make a play on him if they choose to. Starting with the Vancouver Canucks, they have over $14 million in cap space, so you'd think they'd be a prime candidate to go after Pietrangelo, but doing so would likely result in them losing guys like Markstrom and Toffoli this year. If you look to the future, Pettersson, Hughes, and Demko need deals after next season, which the Canucks need to prepare for now given the NHL's cap situation. So while they could pursue Pietrangelo, it would hurt their ability to lock up their young and talented core in the next couple of seasons. Another team with a lot of cap space, the Avalanche have over $22 million in projected space for the upcoming season, but a lot of that will likely go towards re-signing several of their free agents. In addition to this, next year they have some key pieces at the end of their contract, namely Landeskog, Grubauer, and Makar, which they need to save cap space for. The Avalanche also have a ton of right-handed defensemen, including Makar, Eric Johnson, Ian Cole, Connor Timmins, and Nikita Zadorov. Several of these guys would need to be moved if they wanted to pursue Pietrangelo. So while the Avalanche certainly could go after Pietrangelo, they would need to give up on signing some of their current pieces to do so. In addition, Colorado has a pretty talented decor already, and while Pietrangelo would certainly improve it, I don't see him being a good play for the long-term health of the Avalanche. So there it is. 5 teams I see as both having a need for Pietrangelo and the cap space to afford him if he goes to market, along with a couple honorable mentions. I would love to hear what you guys think. Is there a different team you think will land Pietrangelo, and how much do you think he ends up signing for? Let me know down in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe, and I really appreciate all of you that do. You can also follow me on Twitter to keep up to date on when I'm posting. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and I will see you in the next video.